Hello everyone and welcome back to this second episode of our replatforming series. In the last episode, we covered about what replatforming is and why businesses should look to replatform. In today's episode, we are going to talk about how to estimate these replatforming projects, what can go wrong, what are some of the best practices, and what to keep in mind and how to deal with the unknowns. And to talk more about this, I welcome our team of experts of replatforming, Abhishek, Panshul, and Sabreena. Welcome back, team.
Hi Prateek.
Hi.
In the last episode, as I said, right, we spoke about why to replatform, what are some of the things, what to keep in mind and things like that, right? One of the things that we keep coming across when we talk to customers and when we work on any RFPs, right? So one of the very first thing is like how to estimate these things, right? There are so many unknowns to deal with as well, right? So maybe starting with you, Abhishek, because you come a lot at the pre-sales stage, right? How do you start estimating the timeline and the effort required to replatform projects during these pre-sales stages?
So before starting any estimation activity, it is critical to understand the client's requirement better, right? So therefore, we prepare a pre-sales questionnaire for the client to answer various critical aspects of the projects like replatforming rules, key metrics, content governance model, workflows, integrations, analytics, and migration aspects. So after receiving this clarification, we start our estimations with the help of our predefined estimation sheet. This estimation sheet is aligned with our various project phases like discovery, design, front-end development, back-end development, site launch. These phases hold relevant activities which then estimated further. So estimating activities, by understanding the scope of scope that is laid out. Sometimes what happens, the scopes are not that much clear, right? There are a lot of uncertainties, right? And there are vague requirements. So for that, what we do, we actually weigh it by confidence factor, right? Let's say if the requirement is vague and there are uncertainties and unclarities, we give a lowest possible number. And oppose if we have a lot of understanding, right, and there is no ambiguity within the requirement and the given scope, we give the highest confidence factor, which enables or gives a timeline, a cushioning, for the estimations, right? Another way is if there are a lot of uncertainties within the scope, we put down our assumptions. Right, assumptions are give us some sort of rationale for the estimation that number that we have arrived on, right? And these assumptions are not only helpful for that particular estimation, but that can be utilized by the discovery team, right, to clarify on those assumption and the form of the scope and the requirements, right? So based on these strategies, this gives us a budget range and the timelines, which then we use for our staffing needs.
Okay. And how would you answer that, Panchul, right? I mean, like when it comes to these estimating these timeline and efforts, right? So there are projects where we have more clarity, where you have access to the customers, they know what they want as well, right? And there is a well laid down platform requirements as well, as compared to there are certain situations like RFPs where you don't know much about it, right? We are going all blank in, right? I mean, what kind of questions do you ask and what is it that you do to approach and gain clarity and then to further estimate those replatforming projects?
In a lot of cases, what we have observed is that a lot of customers, they don't know what they are achieving or what they want to achieve with this new platform. What is the target that they are going ahead for? So in these cases, we help them out, and thanks to Abhishek for mentioning the detailed questionnaire. And in this case, questionnaire really helps us in understanding what is the current architecture, what is the current position in the market, or what is it that they are currently working with, and what is it that they are what are some of their desired outcomes, or what are some of the required changes as well that they are expecting on the site. So in this case, where we have the questionnaire ready, we have a standard questionnaire ready, and based upon the requirement, what we do is we change some of these questions from the questionnaire so that we also are changing these questionnaires according to the customer as well. And we make those customization, we write down our assumptions, and these questionnaires, they help us to get the information, the relevant information. And then the second step over here is to get on a call with customer and explain what are the assumptions that we have taken and what is the purpose behind writing this question down so that it can help us gather more information. And these calls with customer, they help us to gather more information around the current architecture and what is it that they are trying to achieve. So if I try to map it in some kind of a diagram or some kind of a flow, I would say A is where they are currently working on, or A is the current platform and B is their desired outcome. And there's some kind of connection in between, and this is the connection that we have to figure out. In some cases, the connection is pretty clear. In some cases, the connection is something that we make out of the requirements, out of understanding their current platform. And that's how we approach it. We get on a call with customer, we ask the relevant questions, we make sure that we are sharing our experiences by working on different platforms in the past as well. We share our case studies so that they know that this is something that we have worked with. And when it comes to, getting into more details, when it comes to getting into the details of what they are wanting to achieve, we then start documenting things from the understanding from the previous calls and then take it out from there.
Got it. So the key that I get from both of you is that ask questions as many as you can to firm up the scope and the assumptions so that then we can get to the estimation side of thing. But what if that you don't have an opportunity to ask questions or a very limited way? I mean, we run into these situations more often than not when there are these RFPs. We sometimes don't get access to the customers as well. But then, and these are bigger hundreds of thousands of dollars of replatforming projects as well, right? So things can go wrong. What are some of the best practices? Is it assumptions the best practice to kind of keep it, or do you typically also do hey, let's estimate the discovery because we know how much time discovery would take, and then the rest of the estimation can come post discovery when you have that chance to look at the platform, know the specifics as well. Have you come across these kind of examples?
Yeah. So in such cases, what we generally do is we detail out our assumptions well enough so that they know that this is something that we assumed initially for reaching to this number. And when we estimate, as the word says, estimate, it is not the exact number. Right? We're not saying that we are trying to achieve something in the 10 hours. We'll definitely give some kind of low hours and high hours so that we are able to keep that buffer as well. To make sure that we are not adding to the pressure for the development team to cover something in the range of 10 hours itself. There is some kind of range that is given to them that if this is the requirement, and if you are pretty much clear, if your confidence level is high, you can do something in 8 hours. But if you think there are some missing areas, or if you think there are some things that are still missing from the requirement standpoint, then you still have that buffer to complete the task in. So that's what we generally do. We detail out our assumptions, and we also make sure that we are giving some kind of range so that it is pretty much clear for the customer as well to understand. Okay, this is something that is happening right now. This is our current situation. Based upon our current situation, this is the number we have. But let's say if something changes tomorrow, there is some kind of buffer in between so that we are pretty much covered over there.
I think with some of these examples, right, I think we have tried to stay in that range and being very transparent to our agencies and the customers that we work with, that because of these unknowns, this is what the range is. And as we get into discovery, we'll firm up our estimations further, right? Because there's, in the last episode, we were talking about things ranging from the UI UX when the design is not even ready. How do you even estimate what effort would it require to build those templates as well, right? And the UI components, what kind of integrations when we have not studied all the APIs and how they want to use it. Migration, right? I recollect that I think we used to use one framework or a template where depending upon the content types, number of entities, number of taxonomies as well, we were able to come up with some sort of an estimation formula. But again, that wasn't perfect either. But it was only relevant to this data migration activities in general. So my question to you, Sabreena, right? I mean, especially when you're doing this replatforming where customers are looking to replatform from the UI UX perspective as well, right? There's nothing there. We know what platform looks like currently, but we don't know what is this going to look like, except talking about some of the things and the wish list that they want to have, or they have to have it in the new platform, right? As a front-end architect, how do you estimate these efforts needed to build these front-end templates and components without having a finalized UI design at the pre-sale stage or before doing the actual UI UX design?
When we don't have anything as a wireframe or as a reference, the actual design, the strategies and best practices, so that we can give some estimates. So if we have since we are replatforming, so that means there is something existing. So we have some existing site in most cases that we can take as a reference. And based on that, we go with the requirements. Whatever is in the existing site, we start with the basic requirements. Like suppose with the basic setup, like that we, in the estimations, we start with what the basic setup, or like with the theme setup or the tooling or the best practices, we set some estimate on that. Then we start dividing the project into smaller pieces. Like we start with the global elements, like we have headers, we have navigations, we have buttons, forms, elements. So these things that are common across every project, we did some estimate on that, because we know it will take some time. Although we don't know the design, but we know it is going to take this much of amount of time. So we break down into smaller pieces. We are having the elements, we are having the components, like some common components. We have suppose callouts, we have banners, we have sidebars. So it's common. We have navigations. So estimate those. Then we move to the templates, like we see how many layouts are there, checking the existing site, or even if there are some sketches, rough sketches, what layouts they need, what kind of, it's a structured, unstructured, they need semi-structured, how many layouts. So those we document, we estimate those. Then we go to the pages, how many pages could be there. So it's going from step one, from smaller pieces to building the bigger elements, and we have some estimate. And on top of that, we have to estimate for the, it's responsive. So we will account for that. We will take some range of breakpoints. Okay, these breakpoints, it will be completely responsive. So we have to cover for that. So we take that into consideration. Then on top of that, we took accessibility standards into consideration. We have to account for that. It should be there. So those, we keep some time for that. And we document the assumptions as well. We are documenting for every piece, for every component, we document, okay, we are assuming it will be navigation, will be like this, it will be level 1, level 2, or level 3, we document that, whatever is as per the previous site. So those things we consider. And we took that, as Abhishek and Panshul mentioned, we took the confidence level, we have a 1 to 6. 1 is when we don't know anything. So we are giving some basic estimate, and it can go 1 to 6. And if we are fully confident, we can give 6 or in between. So that will the lower estimate and the higher estimate for us. So there we go. And after that, there is obviously some buffer time. Apart from these, there is some buffer time. So to any unforeseen technical challenges, we may go. So that is it. And I wanted on that, apart from the technical, we can estimate for the non-technical aspects as well. We can have some discussions, some brainstorming, some implementation details, overview, or unit testing, PRs that we are raising. We have to estimate for that. Okay, the code should pass the quality. So those things we accommodate in that estimation. So everything we took, even if we don't have anything, but these are the basic elements that we should basically estimate. Then comes the actual part. If you have the designs, then it would be phased estimation. We will go into the second part. We have the real designs. We will re-estimate and revisit those estimates. We need to maybe drop the estimates, increase the estimates based on the real designs. So that is, we follow some strategy and best practices for that.
This entire estimation is because it also revolves around these assumptions and this range, right? Are customers okay when you tell them, hey, there is a range, or do you are kind of always into a pressure? Because a lot of time customers, obviously, because of their budgeting purposes, right? I mean, it's important to align on a number or a ceiling at least, that, hey, we wouldn't go beyond this thing. We need to understand today so that we can invest into this replatforming efforts at all, right? Any examples or anything that you have seen in your experience where you had to make a case for it, why range is needed versus a single number? Was there any pushback from our customers as well, or you had a hard time explaining that to the customer as well?
Yeah, sometimes it happens, when they come, because where the confidence level is low, because we don't have the enough data for that. And we have to communicate it openly. Okay, we have to maybe create some POC for that as well. It should be clear to them why there is a range, so much range, from very low to very high, because of these reasons, because of these assumptions. So there we have to negotiate on something. We have to make them understand, so duty, how to make them understand why it's like that. And yeah, definitely, I believe in one of the recent projects we come across, we estimated something, there was some based on some assumptions, but later we came to know, okay, there's a project scope creep. What we initially thought it is these features we have to build, but later we came to know, okay, these more extra pages we have to build because there was some delay in the communication, delay in feedback from the stakeholders that caused those kind of situations arise while we estimate the things.
Got it. No, that's interesting. So I think the key things are, one, starting with assumptions, asking questions, right? So as much clarity as you can. Wherever we don't have a clarity, we make assumptions and we create that range, and depending upon the confidence level, right? And lastly, like Sabreena, you mentioned, you brought an interesting point of the POCs and the discoveries, right? I mean, so it's also important to realize that there are few things that which we will not be able to estimate at all, or it would be like just a very guesstimate, if not estimate, to just pull that out and then put a number in front of the customers as well for the planning and the budgeting purposes. But we know that, right, these numbers does not have a lot of research or depth to it, right? So POCs and discoveries help us validate those things, right? In general, in fact, I mean, Sabreena, in the last episode when you talked about the OSCHR, right? So we had a lot of those moments where we were not too sure about, right? It started with those content strategies and all, and things like that. So, but then I think over the period of time, we were able to gain that understanding and re-estimate as well. So do you see, Abhishek, an opportunity to re-estimate as well after providing the initial range to the customer?
Yeah, definitely. So once you have, given the broader idea of the budget and, make further alignments, it is, these exercises happens when after the discovery phase has happened and we have the much clarity about the, feature that being developed, and, we have the more clarity on the designs and the maybe some POCs has made up a clarity on the, the features and the scope. So re-estimations has always be a good idea, right? And so that we are more closer to the budget, and if it is, you are responding to an RFP, it becomes very much crucial, right, for the winning purposes, right? So being it is also gives ease to our delivery team for the staffing purposes, right? So putting in the right people for the right duration, right? And so re-estimation is always been a better approach for for any successful deliveries.
Got it. So re-estimating that, and then sometimes we have that opportunity to do that post-discovery as well. Okay, that's interesting. So maybe Panshul, right? I mean, what factors do you consider when estimating, let's say, the cost of migration for upgrades, let's say D7 to D10, D11 versus the replatforming to different technology altogether, like Sitecore or SharePoint to Drupal or Acquia DXP, right? How do you, does your mindset change when estimating for these upgrades versus this entire replatforming?
Definitely. There's a difference, since there is, the overall difference between the implementation, the kind of implementation when we do when we are considering migration, and the kind of implementation when we do replatforming. Since there are differences of implementation, there is a difference of thinking about the estimation as well. As an example, if we are moving from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, or possibly from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, we have to think about the content types. We have to think about custom modules involved. We have to think about contributed modules involved, because you're changing the version, the core version of the CMS. And in such cases, it is important for you to check the compatibility of the current list of modules that you're using. In such cases, you may have to think about the stability of the module as well. Let's say your module that is involved as part of Drupal 7 is in the stable version, but it is not in the stable version when it comes to the latest Drupal version. In such cases, what you have to do is you have to think about either patching the module, creating some kind of custom work, and you have to estimate accordingly, because there is some amount of custom effort required to make the module compatible. Or maybe you have to think about contributing back to the community by helping, accelerating the contribution of the version change from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. So in such cases, the estimations differ, because these are some of the factors that you have to consider when it comes to migration. But when it comes to replatforming, since you have to rethink about your content architecture, you have to rethink about your number of fields involved in the content type, and how would you create these fields in the new platform? Are there any fields that are to be deprecated? Because in some cases, what happens is that The new fields aren't required for, some of the fields aren't required for the new platform. And in such cases, you have to think about your complete architecture as well. Another great example, and in case of Drupal, this would be a best example, because I've worked with some of the organizations where they were completely sure about how they want the new architecture, the new content architecture on their new platform. And in such cases, we were able to trim down a lot of fields, which helped in cutting down the estimates of the migration. And apart from content, you have to think about the custom work as well, because I'm sure when it comes to building a CMS, not everything is achievable by what is provided by the CMS. In some cases, you have to write the custom modules as well, custom work as well. Let's say you're working with WordPress, and WordPress, it is custom plugins, but when you're working with Drupal, it is custom modules. So you have to create that kind of mapping as well to move from plugins to Drupal. Is the functionality available? Is the functionality provided by Drupal community in some kind of contributed module, or do you have to write the custom module of your own? That's something that you have to figure out. In some cases, we have to also think about how are the packages managed in the previous CMS in the previous website. How would you manage the packages in the new website? So that affects the estimates as well. And then there's the front end part of the site where, in the last episode, Abhishek mentioned about the pattern lab implementation or the atomic design pattern. That's something that you have to consider as well. So these are some of the factors when it comes to estimating a migration project versus estimating a replatforming project.
Got it. That's insightful. And maybe along those lines, and especially on the front end aspect, maybe Sabreena, right? There are few replatforming projects that we have done where there was no UI UX revamp. It was more like a lift and shift, but then replatform to a newer technology, right? How do you approach those estimating? Are those easier, or can you go wrong over there as well? Even though UI UX is available, like what are things to consider for those lift and shift replatforming projects?
Yeah, in those cases where we are doing the lift and shift mainly because they want the same, they don't want to change the branding. So we are going to use the same brand. So we can add top on that, like we can't change whatever they have given, like we are going to use the same whatever CSS, JS they are using because they want the same thing. But we can improve, like we have done, like we have improvised that, maybe how they have implemented, maybe they use the older system, like how they were generating the styles or the libraries, how they're using. We made it more efficient. Like if we want some component on a page, we can just load the JS or the styles when that component is loaded. So that improvisation we did when we do that kind of migration where we don't want to change the brand. So we did that so that we can make it more efficient and perform it. It's not like we just copy paste and have everything there. No, we are basically reviewing that and making it more efficient. That happens.
No, makes sense.
Yeah,
makes sense. No, that reminds me of an example as well. Like even though we were doing the replatforming and the customer said, hey, make the website or the platform look as is, but at the same time, there was structural changes, right? Instead of a one big body field, there were like components on the new page. Now you have to still figure out, maintain and achieve the same design, but then in the essence, these are like separate components. So the entire replatforming efforts and strategy to design those components, as well as then also the migration efforts would differ, I guess, Panshul, Abhishek, like how to fetch content from a big body field to and then split it into multiple components as well and make it available. So it's so crucial to kind of have that.
That is because there are two aspects to that. Like one is we are just having the same structure and we are copying the same whatever the styles are there and we are improvising that. But another thing is if you're changing the structure, there's a big body field and we are dividing into multiple fields, then we have to write additional code for that so that we can make it look as it was there. For them it is just we are not changing anything, but for us we are making it better.
Got it. And does it also depend, Sabreena, like for example, let's say if you were replatforming to a decoupled architecture versus a monolithic architecture, right? So one is the design. Now there's a complexity of that as well. And the backend, I guess, there's this API development as well. And I'm also going through not only talking about the web interfaces, but then also replatforming to a DXP platform, which is omni-channel in nature, right? It can enable mobile applications, other kiosks and other interfaces as well. But to you, Sabreena, right? I mean, is there a difference in the approach that you estimate a decoupled or a headless project versus how you estimate a traditional DXP platform?
not a different approach, but we have to think of the various aspects, like estimating a project from the finance perspective. That could be same, like we have to estimate the same components, the same elements, how we are going to design or set up a theme for that, even if it's a decoupled. But we have to think of the integrations part, where like the API calls, we are fetching the data from the another system, how we fetch that data, where we are getting the data, and before getting the data, how we build those components with the static data. So those things we have to estimate. Okay, if we are building the components, how we work with the static data for now, and when we get the actual data, how to integrate with that. So that will increase. That is another part that we have to consider in the estimates. But the overall thing, how it should look like, that will be almost same, whether we are building in a decoupled or we are building a single architecture, that it will be same, but we have to cover those things, how to integrate the data with our system. That we have to
Got it. And obviously keeping in mind like what frameworks you are going to use.
Yes.
As well, right? I mean, in general. Okay, that makes sense. Abhishek, I know, I mean, Panshul already touched a bit upon it, like estimating these custom logic and workflows, right? How do you approach estimating this custom logics and business workflows, which are a lot of times hidden, right? I mean, they are happening in the background. You are seeing few things on the interface, maybe some few things customer has shared, but then a lot of times we don't even know in entirety the exact workflow, right? So how do you go about estimating those workflows and custom business logics?
Yeah, so estimating custom business logic and the business processes are sometimes very challenging, and it requires an open conversation with the end client. So we have to understand their business processes, and there are broadly three terms that we have to understand. First is, what are their workflows? Is there any decision tree? And there is a custom rules for their business operations that is established, right? So based on this breakup, we try to understand all inherent the process, right? So once this is clear, then we decompose all of these complex processes into very atomic functions or modules, right? These atomicity gives us, a better understanding or granular approach of understanding their business rules, workflows, and any conditional logics. For example, there are situations where the businesses are operating with certain non-negotiable processes that may be imposed due to some financial constraint or legal requirements, right? And we have to be mindful of moving these non-negotiable features into the upcoming replatform system or application, right? Similarly, there could be the very specialized business operational workflows, right? For example, there could be a approval process, right? And there could be some automated triggers, to send a mass notification for the users at large. So these are the things where you are doing your pre-sales activities and you are sending the initial questionnaires. First, you break down those things through that, and then I think a conversation with the end client will be helpful to understand the inherent complexity of their business operations, right? And secondly, once you have these granular understanding about their businesses, right, we try to map these understanding with the future development roadmaps, right? For example, there could be a custom module developed in the future applications, which could implement all these business requirements. Maybe there could be third-party integrations, which gives an advantage over time implementation timelines, right? And maybe your future application, let's say if we specifically talk about the Drupal, could provide you in inbuilt or default functionality to implement those business needs. For example, let's say a business is operating or or creating a personal, a very specific content moderation workflow, right? In their earlier application, that might be a case where they have written a lot of code for that implementation, but because of the this replatforming opportunity and this modernized tool, we have an opportunity to create those things by just enabling few modules and the configuring them, right? So these sort of granular understanding will not only give you a lot of inside information, but also gives you a better understanding of the development roadmap, and that reflects on your estimations. Your estimation, better understanding will cut down the estimation, and maybe optimized estimation will come out.
Got it. No, that makes so much sense. Right? I mean, because replatforming is not just moving things from here to here, but then also improving upon it, right? So it's not necessarily the way that things were implemented or the workflows that were there were optimal. I mean, this is our opportunity to kind of make them better and make them more future-proof as well, right? So that there's a lot of key insights over there, Abhishek. And maybe along those same lines, right? One other major part of this replatforming, I think, Panshul, is more about the integrations, right? The one integrating with the existing tech stack, maybe the legacy stack as well, that could be there to talk or sometimes related to these workflows, sometimes for any other purposes, be it marketing automation, CDPs, DAM, PIM, and others, right? But also being mindful of that, keep building the system in a way so that it's ready for future integrations as well. And if they want to even change the integration, sometimes the replatforming comes with not just building the core system, but also changing the integrated systems as well, and rehauling the entire DXP platforms in general. How do you approach and estimate these integrations, and what are the key things to keep in mind while estimating them?
We have seen these cases for multiple customers where they are aware about their integrations, and in some cases, they are able to share us the access to the integration so that we can look into how these integrations are working. In some cases, these integrations, they have their own interface where you are able to create some kind of connection with your CMS. I'll take Drupal as an example over here. So let's say there is a integration, and then you have a Drupal website. Then I'm sure there is some kind of interface that would help you to create this connection between your integration and your Drupal website. And in these cases, what is important is to understand what is this integration trying to resolve, or what is the purpose of doing this integration. Once you have understood the purpose, once you have understood the functioning of the integration, then it gets easy for you to understand or create that mapping in mind that this is how the integration would work in Drupal. But in some cases, it is complex and it requires some kind of POC as well before we get to the actual implementation. In some cases, POC is required even for the estimation exercise. So before things go into the development team's hand and they start working on the integrations, it is required for the pre-sales team to look into the integration to understand how is it going to work, and do a small POC maybe to understand how the complete architecture would be. And this is where it helps us in reaching to the I won't say the perfect number, but reaching to an estimate that is shareable and that can be discussed with the customer. And this is how we approach when it comes to the integration, because it is important for you to understand the functioning. It is important for you to understand the objective, and then accordingly estimate. The second case would be your customer doesn't know about the integration, and they say that they have heard about that this integration would work best in this case. In such cases, what you have to do is you have to look into different options available. Let's talk about CRM integration over here, right? We know that there are good amount of CRM tools available in the market right now. And all of these CRM integrations, CRM tools are ready for the integrations as well. But then you have to understand the requirement that the customer has. And based upon those requirements, if there is a match between the CRM tool and the requirement, then that's the tool for you. And then you go ahead with the estimation. So in some cases, you have to figure out the tool on your own. But in some cases, customer is already, aware about the CRM integration, aware about the tools, and then they come up with a set of tools that they want to integrate with, and then you estimate accordingly. So that is the journey that we have observed so far. And there is a journey of, okay, we know this, and this is something that we have shared with you. So go ahead and estimate. Okay, so we don't know this. This is what we know so far. Why don't you figure out and come back with a number?
Yeah, no, there's so much uncertainty, right? I mean, the example that you took, right? I mean, doing a POC to actually even get to the estimate, not like post-estimation POC at the discovery level, right? I mean, that's so much true. I think even for OACHR, we had to do certain search-related POCs where like, how do you do and have a Solar which indexes contact from multiple sources and all, right? And then maintain that, right? And that's not on any kind of a standard Solar provider, but more like a custom implementation, self-hosted one. How do you even set those things up, right? So that's so true over there as well. And these integrations, right? Again, like the CRM example, right? I don't know. I don't recollect if one of you worked on it or no, but then there was this RFP where customer wanted to integrate Element 451 CRM to their DXP platform. And they just said that, hey, we have just come across this CRM tool. We really like it. We don't know how we are going to use it, but that CRM also offers event management, a chat bot, apart from just a standard CRM functionality. Now estimate it. And we were like, how do you do that? Like, what kind of requirements do you have? Because it's a wish list. So sometimes customers also come, or do they come to you, right, asking, hey, this could be there, not necessarily right now, but then figure it out and have it so that we are ready for the future implementation as well. Has you come across those scenarios as well?
Yep, definitely. And I'll quote an example, a recent example over here, where there was no CRM integration in place. Everything was on their website itself. And now they had the CRM integration in place. But to reach to this state, there was a lot of research work required. Let's say there is an X form on the website and you're moving it to a CRM integration tool or a CRM tool. What you have to do is you have to understand the number of fields required, number of fields created on the website. I'm sorry. So there are a number of fields that are created on the website, and then you have to create these number of fields on your CRM tool as well. So yes, in some cases, what happens is that the customer, they hear about the features that the integration provide. They hear about the X amount of pass that the CRM integration or some kind of integration provides. And they say that this is something that we want to implement on the website. Why don't you go ahead and figure out if this is doable, if this is implementable on the site? In these cases, what we have to do is we have to understand the tool. We have to figure out if there is some kind of pricing involved as well. In some cases, these integrations are freely available. These integrations are extendable as well. But in some cases, there is some kind of pricing involved as well. Let's say there is basic available that is free, but then you have to upgrade to get the premium version. So in such cases, the estimate changes accordingly, and you also have to share this number so that they are aware about the premium version. They are aware about the features that the premium version provides.
Makes sense. Right? So estimating is not obviously just the implementation of the build, but also the integration cost, the hosting cost, and then everything, right? Because that's the overall cost for the customer, right? To re-platform from the existing platform to the new one, right? Okay. Great over there, right? Maybe to you, Sabreena, right? How do you typically balance the need of an accurate estimates with the potential of unexpected technical challenges in both backend as well as the front end, right, of replatforming projects? I know you've already said a little bit about like keeping the buffers to kind of tackle those uncertainties, but then are there strategies that you use or educate customer with, right, to ensure that those uncertainties are taken care of while estimating?
Yeah, right. That usually comes like with the estimations, like there are some scenarios where we go into some technical challenges. So on that part, like that is unforeseen, we don't know. But internally we collaborate on that, like to understand between the backend and the front end team to understand how this particular thing will come up. So there is an internal collaboration, like that's a strategy follow. We talk about that, okay, how it's going to build and how it comes on the front layer. So those kind of researches we do on our level internally. And suppose with the migrations, if we are migrating the content, there is some content coming, when it comes on the front end, it will break the layout. So those things these things arise. So those things we already check on our end, like the migrations or the integrations. Like I recently remember we have a HubSpot form integration in one of the projects where we don't have full control over the forms, like the styling is coming from that. Or if we want our styling in that. It's not like we will give the style and they will integrate there. It will not be like that. It's an external kind of system. We have to give them the whole file and it won't be performant at all. So those kind of challenges we face, and that time, like, it's something kind of coordination we have to build internally and with the stakeholder as well. Look, we have these kinds of scenarios, these things that come up while migrating or while having the external systems. So these scenarios could arise. We are foreseeing these things. So we basically, definitely, as I mentioned, we put a buffer for that. We put some confidence level, but we do some internal research as well on that. What number we can give to them, or what help we need from them. Okay, if you want to test that, like as Panshul mentioned, there could be some tools that are free, but if we want to do some more customizations on that, like if we, I'm taking the example of the HubSpot form, we want some more customizations on that, and it was not possible with the default trial version. If it's a paid, are they going with the paid version? We need to add some classes or add some markup. Is it possible? Can we do that? So we have to do some research so that we can get back to them. See, we need these. Is it feasible? Then only we can make those customizations, whatever is required, and to integrate that in our system. So it shouldn't look like it's an external thing. It's within our system, it's working with our theme. So those kind of technical challenges definitely come, and we have to work on that. And with the customer, the communication should be transparent on that part.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? I mean, yeah, so there are so many moving parts over here, right? And then kind of breaking it down and then taking it one by one, right? But on a related note, right, or rather not so related note, right? There are times when we don't have an opportunity to go granular, right? I mean, when the customer is like, tell me at a broad level, right, what kind of budget do you require, right? And Abhishek, to you, right? I mean, at times we have done more like a timeline-based estimation as well. Like a discovery would take 4 weeks. These many roles, let's budget it. A kind of a UI UX design will take 8 weeks. This phase will take that phase, right? I mean, so can you give an example like how estimating based on the timeline or phase-wise is different than this granular feature-wise estimation? And does that help customers?
Yeah. So basically, when you do not have any clue of you're not able to size the project based on the features, or there is no enough information from the customer side. So it is better to have the estimation based on the team size, right? So what we do, we we first look at the size of the project based on the whatever the requirement we have. We generate a very tentative timeline. Right, and based on that, we try to allocate, our staffs, right, ranging from various roles. So this gives us a very high level, budgets and costing. For what are the costs that will imply when we, deploy these staff on a different roles for a certain time, right? So based on that, and the actual rates, we can judge what should be the actual range for this particular project, and what should be in the estimated timelines. So yeah, this does help, and I think this is the other way to estimate the efforts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this helps us validate as well, because sometimes you are not so confident on the feature-wise breakup because you don't know enough. So doing this sort of an estimation and aligning, I think, kind of helps as well. And we have been doing that as well on a lot of these RFPs, and being very transparent to our customers and that we work with, right? Okay, we are allocating a budget to a phase. Now, when we get into the actual project, we try to align with that budget so that we obviously don't overrun the customer budgets, right? They have to take care of that and all. So what best we can do, what we can deliver within that budget in case newer things comes up, right? And I think maybe in the discovery and the strategy call, we may deep dive into the feature prioritization side of things as well to align with the budgeting. But then I guess, like you mentioned, Abhishek, this approach is really useful as well for our customers.
I think on top of that, we can use, I think we use historical data, like when we have to just give the complete estimation, we can't break it down. So we can use the historical data, the timeline, the resources that we can use for that in order to give that estimate.
No, absolutely. No, that's a very, a very important point to mention, right? And obviously that historical data and the experience of, like, for example, somebody like you, where all three of you have worked on dozens of projects, right? So sometimes or you even work backwards based on the timeline as well, right? Hey, we need to re-platform this from this tech to this tech in like 12 months from now or 6 months from now, right? And running backwards, editing or allocating the budget to respective phases, I think that's another way to kind of arrive at the estimation and what should be done when, and that is helpful too, right? I mean, because in the end, obviously, it's important to align with the overall budget of the customers. So, yeah, makes sense, Sabreena. Can you all give me an example where replatforming estimation has gone wrong for you? Like, do you recollect like where you were like, okay, we don't know what we were considering while estimating, and or maybe in the other way, or the other words, what I'm trying to ask is like, what are some of the do's and don'ts of estimating these replatforming projects so that we can avoid and manage the risk upfront for both us as well as for the customer?
Yeah, I think I can start by answering this question by a simple statement saying that don't be overconfident when it comes to the estimates, because as the word says, it's just the estimate and it's not the exact number. And we are talking about low hours and high hours over here. So just don't be overconfident. Even if you have implemented something, ensure that you're writing your assumptions down. You're making sure that you're considering uncertainty factor as well. You're keeping that buffer as well. So these are some of the things that you can keep in mind. And yeah, from my end, I would say that overconfidence is the biggest reason in the cases where the estimations fail or the estimations go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And this overconfidence not from the team who is replatforming, but also sometimes from the customers, right? Because I recently recollected an example where there was this upgrade and we gave some estimate about like 200 to 300 odd hours, and the customers on the call while you were explaining, and they were like, this should be an 8-hour job. And obviously, so we were not like close, like it wasn't like 100 hours or 150 hours closer to 300. It was like simply 8 hours. And we were like, no, this is not happening. And it took us a time to explain to them, right, why this is not an 8-hour, 10-hour job, right? It's not like that, because sometimes customers also come from their budget, their timeline, and the perceptions they have in their mind as well. So breaking it down, estimating it, calling out the clear assumptions really, really helps, Panshul. Thank you for that. Abhishek, Sabreena, do you want to add anything on top of that?
Yeah, I'd like to add on that point that Panshul mentioned, like where estimations, like we don't have to be overconfident. And apart from that, like when we are giving the estimates and we share with the client, they are okay with that. But then comes the timeline kind of thing. Even if we share the budget, but they have some timeline, like they want to suppose do it within a month or 2 months, 3 months. And based on the timeline, are we able to do within the timeline? Like it depends, like we have to add that many resources. But it again depends, even if we add suppose 10 resources, but is it feasible to add 10 resources at a time? Because we have to do some groundwork, like we have to start from the setup. So it's not feasible to add 10 resources at a time. We have to start with the 2 resources, supposed to start the setup. And then we go to the next phase, like we start with sprint 0 where we have the setup and all. So all are not needed. Then we go to the next step, building the backend. So maybe frontend is not needed at that time. And slowly we gradually move to the front-end part. We have something from the backend, we integrate it with the front-end, and slowly it goes like that. So there is something that is coming and then going to the front end and then going to the testing and then going to the deployment. So it goes that way. So it's not like, okay, we have a 3-month timeline and we can add maybe 20 members, it will be done within that. It's not like we have to go with a phased manner. So these things we have to communicate with the client. Okay, this is the way how it goes. So if we add as many members we want, it will not work for us. So we have to check these things as well, and accordingly we can frame a timeline. So this is, I think, really important. We should consider that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a very important point. Like how do we figure out the dependencies of the other outcomes, right? So unless you do this, you can't move to the next phase, right? And then it's important to kind of plan it and estimate it backwards then as well, like, because those are the things that would go wrong as well on replatforming. It's not about, like you said, right? If it's 1,000 hours, we had like 1,000 people in 1 day or 1 hour, it won't be done in like that, right? So you need to, we all need to plan for it. So planning is an important aspect, I believe, for replatforming estimations, right? And I guess that's what I think, Abhishek, your plan-based or staffing-based estimations comes into the picture, because over there we could probably identify the dependencies of one phase into another, right? Like a content strategy team to the design team, to the technical team, to the QA team, then our DevOps and SRE team, right? How all of them come together and then how these phases are dependent on each other, right?
Correct. So, phase-wise intelligent allocation of staff is important aspect. We cannot, overstaff or understaff various, phases. It creates very other administrative challenges also. right? So it is better, once you have the estimation in place, and so when a staffing needs to be planned, then you go through all the allocations and make the intelligent and right skills for the right phase, which is important.
Yep. All right, no, these are key points. And one last question to all of you, right? What happens when you miss something, right? I mean, it happens, right? I mean, during the replatforming, you miss it entirely. Or could be an integration, could be a feature, or could be a change requirement, right? How do you deal with it? I mean, obviously not more from the planning perspective, obviously how to get it done and related architecture and all, but then the estimations, right? How do you work with the customers when something new like that comes up?
Yeah, I think I can start on that. And on a lighter note, what I've since I've worked recently with Sabreena, I've observed that it is really difficult to match the kind of detail Sabreena mentions in the estimation document. So we haven't really missed out on anything, I'm sure, when it comes to estimations with working with Sabreena on the estimations. So that's one part, but that's on the lighter note. But to be honest, when it comes to let's say if you have missed out on X functionality and you haven't estimated it in your estimation sheet, then you have to be pretty much honest with your customer and call it out that this is something that we missed out initially, and now we think that this is going to take X amount of time. So it is so the first step would be to communicate this to the customer honestly, and then get on a call, explain why was it missed and what can be done. How would you adjust the timeline to make sure that the launch timeline is also not affected, the development timeline is also not affected, and you're able to make it to the final goal or the final final outcome. So the first step is to communicate, and the second step is to make sure that you're managing the work in such a way that you have accommodated the missed requirement pretty well. So I think that is the process to make sure that you have catered to the missed requirement or to the missed estimated part of the site.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And then also I would like to add more like a discovery-wise approach. So for some of the estimations, or especially when we are dealing with RFPs, a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainties, like firming up the estimate for just the discovery phase. Like, hey, we can do discovery in 6 weeks and this is the cost, this is the effort, or 8 weeks, right? But then giving a broad range for the implementation so that at least we can get through the discovery, give us an opportunity to re-estimate it, right? Post-discovery, that has also helped some of our customers to align at a budget, and then while aligning with the overall range that we have provided upfront. So, okay. This is very helpful, Abhishek, Sabreena, and Panshul, right? And a lot of key insights on how to estimate these projects. I know we are halfway through our series, starting from why replatform, what is replatforming, to now estimating these replatforming projects. And next, we are going to talk about how to approach discovery and strategies and defining the strategies of replatforming it, right, in the next episode. So really, thank you all of you to kind of sharing your insight. I'm sure our customers or our audience will find a lot of takeaways from these conversations as well, and our internal team as well, right? I mean, how you can estimate and approach these replatforming projects. So thank you for joining me over here. See you next time in our next episode.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.